so cute. Thank you. Someone dropped by with a Buc-ee's keychain. I'm not cute anymore. Uh-oh. I've never vended in Texas before. This is one of the best mochi I've ever had in my life. I did this back in September. Welcome to day 0 of Anime Frontier. It is my first time vending in Texas, so I'm very, very excited. And it's also just my first time being in Texas overall. Also, I scraped my finger and was kindly gifted this Buc-ee's Band-Aid by my table neighbor. So thank you so much. And it's so funny. Oh, I should probably back up. Had to move a little bit because there's a forklift. So I do get asked a lot, how do I pack my bulky items when I fly to conventions? Because as you know, I do tend to drive to them. However, in this case, obviously I'm not from Texas, so I had to get here from Los Angeles somehow. So I decided to fly. So here's one example of one of my suitcases. I do like to go for a hard suitcase because it can better protect your products from liquid or just the occasional tumble. I do have some of my display Ita bags here, and in order to not waste on space, I do have some product in here. Sometimes it might be plushies, it might be display bags that can fit in here. I have my display plushies in here so that it's not wasted. I have a few more display bags. I will say I just try to Tetris everything. I do have to be a bit more mindful because there is a 50-pound limit. If I go above that, I will have to pay extra, and I don't want to do that. So I do try to weigh the suitcase every so often to make sure that I'm not exceeding that. More bags. I also bring my sweaters in here. I don't bring all of the sweaters in one suitcase. I kind of just sprinkle them everywhere. In this case, I like to use the sweaters as a sort of cushion in between different products because here, besides the Ita bags, I do have some of my grid cubes. The grid cubes do take a lot of space as well as weight. In this case, I think I have about 25 of the wire grid cubes in here, and I do like to cushion this with the sweaters so that it's not damaging anything, because there have been some times where I've broken a few things just from the rustle of airport handling. Underneath all of that, I do have a few of my bins. Since all of my bins don't necessarily fit in one suitcase, I would have to spread them out. I kind of just Tetris them as per usual. In this case, I have my pin bins in here. I don't usually put them in the same suitcase. It's just whatever fits in the moment, and then I'm surprised later on. Just kidding. I do write down what I have in every single suitcase on my notes app so that I know where things are, and if I'm looking for anything in particular like painter's tape, I know where to get it. I also have my lanyards in here so that it can also cushion between dense objects and more fragile items. However, I will say when I am flying, I try my best not to put any valuable, fragile, or even battery operated items in my checked luggage, because I believe starting sometime this year you do need to have your battery operated items with you just in case a fire happens. You're able to assess it. So in my case, I usually just have all my valuables and everything with me. And of course, I do have an air tag in all of my suitcases, so then I know where everything is, and I can keep track even on the airplane where things are and if they're with me, because the worst thing that can happen is that my stuff is left in Phoenix, Arizona, when it should be with me in Texas, so to say. We got our table. Yay! S09. We are next to Ivy, which is very cool. However, we are divided by this walking gap, which is fine, but alas. But essentially my display is a little bit different than usual, mostly because there is a height limit for Anime Frontier. So as you can see, it's essentially 4 feet tall. However, there is signage at the top, but I did have to reach out to Frontier staff to see if that was okay, since I didn't want to bring that and then not actually be allowed to use it. They said it was fine. I do understand why there is a height limit. My assumption is because it's for safety reasons. If the display is too tall and it's not secured, it can fall, whether that's on the artist or on attendees. Obviously, that's not good for either one, so they do have a height limit. However, it does suck because it is essentially a 4-grid height limit if it's, or not just 4 grids, but 4 feet height limit if you're using grids and it's on the table. However, if your display is from the ground up, if you have a flat-footed photo stand, your max is 10 feet. So obviously in this case, if you have that type of setup, you have an advantage compared to people who have the typical grids, but it just doesn't work out for me if I do want to have a photo stand. So we're gonna work with what we have, but did want to show you the display. I do like how it looks. I didn't take a photo of it. I did film a few things because my job never ends and I have to film content all the time. We are going to get dinner later. Will I get to see a Buc-ee's? We'll see. If not, we will save it for another Texas trip, but it would be nice. The fact that I got a Buc-ee's Band-Aid is great already. See you later. We needed this, we needed this, we needed this. If you call us twins, it's actually true because we got the same thing. We got a green milk tea. Is it a milk tea?
Yeah.
The event hasn't even started yet. And we're gorging on treats. We're getting brunch before hitting up Anime Frontier, and it looks so good. Oh my goodness. Apple crumble, red velvet. She's so excited. I was like, where's Ivy? She's in the nursery. She got distracted by the plants, but it's so beautiful. Look how cute. Wow, 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 wow. So many plants. Hello, it is currently 1 something. She's using my phone because I'll talk about that later. But it is day 1 of Anime Frontier. I'm a little bit late on giving a status update during con because it has been a little bit busy, which is quite nice. I will say I did expect a little bit of busyness, at least compared to other conventions, mostly because I've never vended in Texas. Usually when you're a bright and shiny business, because you've never vended in that location, you tend to do a little bit better, at least on the first time, depending on the convention, but kind of I should be working on that. But I will check in a little bit, but wanted to at least give my intro, at least for today. But essentially, con hours today are 1 to 7 p.m., so it did start later, which I do appreciate because it is Friday and most likely people are not in the convention because most of them have work. So at least if it starts later, maybe they'll take a half day, or it also allows us vendors to sleep in a little bit. Also, Emmy came by and gave us some snackies. Thank you, Emmy. Emmy of Pecco Puff / Quaffadoodle. If you didn't know her already, I did do an interview with her on my podcast not too long ago. Was it this year? I think so. So if you're not familiar with Anime Frontier, it is a convention that is set in Fort Worth, Texas. It is near the Dallas area. I know I've never been to Texas, so I'm not super familiar with the geography and the location. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Hi.
I literally have been following y'all two for like over 2 years now. So when I saw when you were coming to Texas, I was like, I gotta
oh my gosh, thank you so much. It's so cute. Oh my god, someone gave. This is so sweet. Ah, thank you so much for stopping by. I'll talk a little bit more about Anime Frontier, but they do have this thing called Pimpalooza, which is optional for artists and vendors. Since I had already designed a cowboy bunny Momo, I did this back in September or October. I know I did a stream on this where I was working on Momo, but I thought, like, you know what, why not participate in Pimpalooza? I already had the artwork, so I decided to participate, and they look so cute. Essentially, with how Pinpalooza works is that you do have to manufacture them yourself, so of course that is some added cost. And Anime Frontier does require that you use their official backing cards. You also had to order them. I do believe you can either go with your own manufacturer, and because I usually use Got Print, I just ordered through them, or you can order it through Anime Frontier and then just pick it up when you check in. But I just decided to go with Got Print, and they look so good. I will say though, at least in terms of the internet, I'm not happy with how the Solis is working. And essentially you could technically try to see if it can connect with another tower, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to go through that process. And right now I just connected my Square terminal to my phone. That one's working so far, so hopefully that does well. However, I was also thinking, is this just a me problem? Like, is that just happening with my Solis? But one of the customers also said that some of the voice actors are having that issue, so it seems to be a convention center issue. So at least for myself, I do use Verizon on my phone. I know Verizon is typically reliable for most conventions, save for a couple. Like, I do remember Otakon, I had a hard time with Verizon versus my friend who had T-Mobile. But it does help to have a hotspot just in case your phone plan doesn't work. I will say, my expectations for Anime Frontier is pretty low, mostly because I heard it is an okay convention. And even for myself, who is flying in to Texas for this, it is a little bit risky, so to say, because Obviously, my expenses are going to be higher because I flew in, I have to hotel, and I would have to Uber because it would be greatly expensive if I chose a hotel that's much closer to con. So in a way, my expectations are very low in that my goal is just to break even and profit a little bit. In a way, my expectations are being exceeded right now. I wouldn't say it's like amazing, but it is a little bit more busy than I personally thought it would go. So I'm pretty happy about that. So thank you so much for stopping by. There's a good amount of y'all who are from YouTube, from social media. So thank you so much. And thank you for the gifts. I appreciate it. I'll also say that I have not experienced such nice restrooms at a convention center since Anime Las Vegas, probably. The bathrooms here are just so nice, so modern, so clean. Granted, I've only gone before con started, but even then, they're like newly renovated and they're super nice. So that's +1 for Anime Frontier for having really nice restrooms. I will also say that when we were trying to find the entrance for the convention center, because by that time it was within the hour until con started, so we were given a map by Anime Frontier via email several times actually, but I've never been to this con center. I'm not familiar with the area, so I don't really know where certain streets are or the configurations of the layout of this location. But once we found where the proper entrance was, it's actually quite nice because there was a lot of staff manning the area around the entrance, and they would actually ask you what your badge is for. If it's Artist Alley, you would go into a separate line, and if you were general, you'd go into another line. And there's also a lot of signage. So essentially, if you go to the right place, you know where to go, and you're not questioning like, oh, should I line up in this area? Should I go in this line? It was very clear. So I do appreciate that, especially when most cons are very confusing and there's too many lines and you don't really know where to go. I did appreciate that clarity. I'll also say I did join the Team Awala. I'm now an Awala girly. I did wait for this specific color because there weren't a lot of bottles that I was a big fan of, at least in terms of the color variations, but I really like this pink. I thought it was perfect, so I just waited till their Black Friday sale got it. And one thing that I also appreciate about this convention center is that there are water refill stations, which is fantastic, because for some cons, they don't have water refill stations, and you are just gonna have to risk either dehydration or a UTI, and we don't want any of that. But the fact that they have water refill stations, amazing. Appreciated. Please have it at every con center. It has slowed down a little bit. I don't even know what time it is. It is 3:07, so it has calmed down a little bit. Maybe people are getting late lunch or so, but we'll see how the rest of the day goes. I will say I have been getting a lot of love with the Momo cowboy pin, so thank you so much if you came by and got one. Low-key, I was kind of afraid that people would not buy it, so thank you for bringing a cowboy Momo home because he's having a great time. He's loving Texas so far. Hello, it is later in the day. It is 4:30. I will say, looking at today's numbers, it's not amazing numbers, but it's still very satisfactory numbers for myself, that if the rest of the weekend goes like this and every single day is about the same, I would be actually pretty happy about it. I'm not entirely sure as to where the main entrance is, because my understanding was that the main entrance is towards that way, because that's also where we would come from. However, when we entered through the supposed entrance, we entered from the side, which is technically facing us, and you would basically have to go through autographs. So I'm not quite sure which entrance is the main one, because it would also be a little weird if we're section S, but then we're towards the entrance, when you would assume that the entrance is towards section A. So I don't really know. I do remember from other artist vlogs, they would mention how this convention is relatively busy. I don't quite know the official attendance count. However, just from a Google search, I actually don't even know how accurate this is, but I did hear that the attendance is from 10 to 20K. It is pretty busy, that it could potentially be around that number. Some people have said that this convention is busy, however, there's not that many sales that come out of it. You could also argue that that's because of the notable voice actors that attend Anime Frontier. Even just from this whole day, and basically us being able to see the lines of the voice actors, like, it's pretty packed. So you can assume that a lot of them are spending on voice actors. Maybe if you're lucky, the attendees have extra money for vendors and Artist Alley, but obviously you can't assume that, and you can't expect it either. So that is one of the drawbacks to a convention that has notable voice actors, or guests for that matter, because attendees might spend a lot of money with them. Sometimes it could be on the lower end of $20 per autograph. Sometimes if they're more famous, so to say, they might be in the hundreds. I've spent $300 for an autograph before, so I would not be surprised if a good amount of attendees' budget does go into the guests that come in. And then, of course, we might be an afterthought. And if we do get a sale, that is pretty lucky. Because while these guests do draw in a lot of attendees, that might not necessarily mean that they're going to spend with the vendors. I will say we did sell out of a couple things, but that's mostly on my end because I just didn't bring enough of it. One of them is with the red classic Eat-A bag, and it's the one that's shaped like a rectangular envelope, so to say. I mean, it was on sale. I am trying to go through that stock since I've had it since 2022. Because it's on sale, I'm sure more people are incentivized to get it versus my green classic Eat-A bag, which is not on sale and is at full retail price. And I think I only brought 2 or 3 of them, so we did sell those out. And then for everything else, it's, you know, they're going. I also just didn't bring a lot of extras for those because I did want to keep my luggage light enough that I'm not hating myself because like once you hit the 50-pound mark, that it's quite heavy, and it's not like I'm just considering one 50-pound luggage. Like I have to consider being able to push 2 50-pound luggages on top of my own carry-on luggage, which is already crazy heavy, as well as my own personal carry-on item. So imagine me just pushing all those things. It's freaking hard. And not only are you dealing with pushing all of that weight around, you're only lucky if you have a smooth surface. Like most of the time you're going through brick, you're going through cobblestone, you're going through carpet. It's awful. So yeah, I didn't really want to suffer through all of that, especially when this convention is said to be okay. I also didn't want to overpack, so I just tried to keep it as light as possible. Didn't really bring my extra pin bins, as you've seen in other vlogs where it's like a 4x6 and it can carry more pins. I didn't want to deal with that. So we just maxed it. I think it's about 6 to 7 pins per design. So I thought that would be pretty reasonable for the weekend. And so far it's okay. I think for the ones that we have sold out, I was already running low on some of them, like the Nesco and the Kiloa pin. So kind of expected. I was like, before I forget, we have a gift to open. This one is from Paloma. Thank you for stopping by. They gave me an ornament. It's a matcha boba ornament. It's so cute. Wow. Cute. I actually don't have a tree, but I am very excited to put this in the office. So thank you so much. It's so cute. So cute. Thank you so much. I was like, I realize I never show Ivy when she's my table neighbor. It's like, how would people know? We're divided by 2 feet. Hello. In the background. It's like our hack for Anime Frontier is just getting more boba, and then it's like, yes. So we're gonna try to film a few things this morning while there's no one here. This is the behind the scenes of all of that. I'm not cute anymore. Uh-oh. Like you leave this one and it's just like that. We got lucky with having the voice actor the voice actor autographs being in front. So now we have all of the space to film. Don't mind the stool. Oh. We have time, so we are looking around the artist alley, but no one is here. What the heck? We were not expecting to get so many goodies, so thank you. We walked around. Yay! Too many responsibilities. Too many responsibilities. We have to work. We have to work a little bit. Hello, it is 10:08 and it is day 2 of Anime Frontier. Con just started not too long ago. For con, we did walk around for a bit. So far, the con is pretty busy. The lines for voice actors have been filling up for a bit, so I'm not expecting too much. Just based off of typical patterns, I would assume that Saturday is a little bit more busy than Friday. If you said hi, thank you so much, and thank you for the goodies. You did not have to do that, but I really appreciate it. We were a little bit productive today in trying to film a few things for socials. Hopefully it'll go out sometime this week. We'll see how today goes. So cute, thank you. We're gonna open the gifts. Oh my goodness, we got some stickers. They're so cute. Oh, it's Anya. It's an Anya keychain. She looks so cute. Ooh, and we got a Hershey's Santa. Very festive. Thank you so much for the gift and for saying hi. I really appreciate it. Time to open the other one. Oh, essentially they sell pins, and this is really cool because it's like a leather cover to secure your pins, so then you can easily look at them. And it has these little holes so you can put your pins on there. This is their business card. And apparently it's their first convention, so thank you for saying hi. Also, funnily enough, if you remember yesterday's clip, we were prepared and got 2 boba drinks, one for last night after dinner and also for today. Since you are able to bring food and drink inside this convention center, we figured it's gonna be a long day. We're basically working 9 hours today, so might as well fuel up on milk tea. Just artist alley things, using our chopsticks to stab into our French toast from yesterday.
It's also cold.
Did the apple crumble help it?
Delicious.
Delicious. Hello, welcome back. It is 1:22, so voice actor. Essentially starting off around the same time as yesterday, and we're here till 7, so there's that. But it is, again, as I said before, it is typical con hours. Can't complain too much about it. I will say today definitely feels a lot more busy compared to yesterday. Our numbers are reaching up to almost yesterday's numbers. I will say there are a good amount of pin sales. I did understock for Ita bags, but I also just don't usually bring that many to begin with because I am flying, and with a lot of conventions where I can't guarantee a specific number, even though obviously you can't guarantee a specific number regardless. I usually don't want to overstock because the worst thing is having to ship several boxes back, and that would not be fun, especially depending on when your flight is or if you even have close access to a shipping center like FedEx or UPS. But anyway, I did end up not bringing as much product as I should have. Now I know, maybe for next year. Though I will say that for Anime Frontier, after talking to some artists who did do this convention last year, comparing it to this year does seem a lot more busy compared to last year, which is very interesting because in my head, and from what I know, and as what I've said in every single convention blog, the economy's down right now. I don't expect anyone to have a good amount of money to spend, especially discretionary funding. I would not expect anyone to have that type of money when people are trying to budget for essentials. With layoffs and everything, sales have gone down this year compared to last year. So it is really interesting to see how, for most people that I've spoken with, this year is better than last year. You can consider that maybe people are more incentivized to buy now because it is their 5th year anniversary. Maybe people wanted to show up because it's a big milestone. I have heard that with this convention, it is still a growing convention. 5 years is still pretty young for an anime con, even if it is run by Left Field Media. It is still a developing convention, but apparently it is getting better year after year. Talking about temperature, because you know how important that is for me when it comes to these events. Looking at everyone's vlogs from last year, I knew that it would be cold in the winter time. However, yesterday and the day before, it was quite warm. I will say it was cold at night. However, during the day, it was in the mid-60s, which is relatively warm for December, at least from what I'm used to. So I was regretting the very thick thermal jacket for a bit. However, starting today, Saturday, day 2, it was pretty cold. I will say it's in, what is the temperature? Right now it's 58, which is not too bad from what I'm used to. Inside the convention, obviously I'm wearing long sleeve. I don't feel cold, nor do I feel warm. I just feel pretty content. So I would say, at least for myself, who is more used to a little bit warmer weather, but not necessarily hot weather, I would say a long sleeve is enough. I know some people here who are wearing a hoodie, but maybe putting it up to their elbows because it's not too cold. And some people, especially if they're from this area, they're wearing t-shirts, so they're probably used to this. However, outside it is very chilly. Oh dang, what the heck? Tomorrow it's gonna be 44. What the heck? How is it? It's 44 tomorrow and then 54 on Monday, and then the rest of the week is like low 70s to high 60s. That's so funny. Why is it so drastic? Yeah, so if you're going to this convention and you're not necessarily familiar with the climate of Fort Worth, I would say bring a relatively thick jacket, but do have something underneath that is comfortable, so then if you do need to take the jacket off, you're not freezing. I will say for products, in terms of bestsellers, at least so far for a good amount of Saturday and yesterday, stickers have been selling really well, enamel pins. We did sell out of Ita bags, however, I could not bring that much to begin with because I did fly here and I only shipped a box. I would say it's just those. Low-key, those are really the only things I brought to this convention besides sweaters, but obviously with sweaters I don't have that many to begin with either, and it also varies depending on size. But I would say those are the 3 things that have been selling really well at this convention. Also, internet is still funky because I'm still using my hotspot to connect with the terminal because otherwise my Solis is not working. I literally left for the restroom and I got a Buc-ee's keychain. What the heck? Someone dropped by with a Buc-ee's keychain. Thank you so much. He's so cute. I haven't even visited a Buc-ee's yet. I'm so sad. So I really appreciate that you're able to do this. And we're matching. Gonna go explore. Come with me. Very busy today for a Saturday. Like the aisles are very, very full right now. I bought this very cute card. It's funny because I was trying to walk around and then I realized there's too many people and I didn't want to walk around anymore. And the people that I wanted to say hi to, I will wait till tomorrow morning when it's not as busy. It's almost 3 o'clock. I will say it, and it's funny because a lot of people have said that at the left field media conventions, it smells like popcorn. And I was like, what does that even mean? And then I walked around the hall and it does indeed smell like butter popcorn, which I'm like, where is it coming from? I don't know. Granted, it might be towards the exhibitor side. However, I have not had a chance to even pass that section because Artist Alley is just so overwhelming. But it smells like popcorn, which is nice because it could smell in other ways. And I'd rather it smell like popcorn than BO. But well, don't look at me like that. You know I'm speaking the truth. A little bit later in the day, it is 4:15 and I'm very, very hungry. But we have some snacks here. Got my bunch of crunch and our communal garden salsa sun chips because garden salsa is the best. And tell me why I love how Delta has garden salsa sun chips. I will miss the Maui pretzels from Southwest, but alas, at least they have sun chips, so it is what it is. Still pretty busy. We did sell out of a couple items. Granted, some of them I already had pretty low quantities for. And we also ran out of glassine bags. Should I have brought more? Maybe. But low-key, I also just didn't fill it up, so that's on me. But luckily, Christine of Quistine did have some, so thank you, Christine. Hello, it is 6:05 and less than an hour until con ends. It has died down quite... Oh my god, that you scared me. I was like, what is that? I'm very happy to announce that I am able to fly back to LA with lighter suitcases. I do not need to ship anything back. If anything, usually needing the requirement to ship anything back is if I didn't sell of like a handful of Ita bags, because usually the box that I use does fit like a handful of Ita bags. So as long as that's sold, I should be solid. And in this case, because I don't have to pay for an overweight luggage. I feel like this is a case for a lot of conventions where I have never vended there, particularly in that state, never vended at that state, never visited that state. Everyone's so kind. I'm very grateful. Everyone's just been so nice about me being here for the first time. They're like, oh, how are you liking Texas so far? And I'm like, same answer. Everyone's nice, the food's great, and I'm vibing. Yay, delicious, delicious. Yay, it looks so... So we went to this matcha place because they have souffle pancakes, and tell me why this is one of the best matcha I've ever had in my life. I was supposed to share with my helper and I tried it and I'm like, oh, I need to get my own, so here's the second one. Souffle pancakes, they look so good. I'm so excited. I haven't had souffle pancakes in so long. They're so silly. They came by and they were like, oh, you're taking photos? They gave us a light. That's so sweet. The lighting's already really good just here alone too. Definitely stop by. They're so nice. Good morning. It's day 3 of Anime Frontier, and it is the last day of this convention. It is 9:17 in the morning, and con doesn't start till 10. It is freezing. I will say the past few days have been relatively pleasant compared to what I heard the cold could be in Texas, or at least in the Fort Worth area, because my expectations were based off of last year, where a lot of my friends were saying that it was frigid cold. So I thought, you know what, I'll bring my large puffer jacket, I'll be great. But the past few days were relatively warm in the mid to high 60s that I thought, why did I bring this jacket? But tell me why. We are experiencing the big cold. It is 32 degrees right now. It is so cold. But essentially looking at yesterday's numbers, I am very, very satisfied with them. Some information about Anime Frontier. As mentioned before, this convention is held at the Fort Worth Convention Center in Fort Worth, Texas. I paid $350 for my table, and you are given an 8-foot by 2-foot table. I would say it's exactly 2 feet in a sense because my grids that are 12 by 12 do span the width of the table. As I mentioned before, if you do have a grid display, you are not able to exceed past 4 12 by 12 grid cubes. However, I will say, even if signage is okay on the 5th grid cube level, there are people who are not following it. I have heard that Anime Frontier staff has been emailing individual artists if they're not following this protocol, but I don't know if they're going to actually enforce the consequences, because in a way it isn't fair for artists who are following the rules with the grid display. This doesn't include the freestanding displays or those who have photo stands, because they're actually able to exceed the 4-foot display height limit, and their max is actually 10 feet. So that is something to consider if you are debating between using grids or a photo stand, and if you have that freedom to do so, which I don't because I need the storage behind my table, I need grid cubes. So in this case, I have to follow this protocol. But if you have prints, it's probably best to go with photo stands because you can max it out to 10 feet, or at least 10 feet off the ground. I will need to clarify that. This is a 3-day convention. It is always Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday has amazing hours. It was from 1 to 7. Today's about the same amount of hours. It's from 10 to 4. Hours were longer on Saturday, but still pretty manageable since it's from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. So pretty happy with the con hours because Friday and Sunday are basically the same, just different times in which it starts and ends. Apps for this convention are juried, so it's basically the same process as when you apply to Anime New York, Rose City Comic Con, just based off of my notes from yesterday and looking at the final numbers from yesterday and including Friday. I would 100% come to this event again. I will say it is a bit risky because I do think that the better sales this year compared to last year is due to a lot of factors. Just to preface before I go into that, after talking with a few artists last year, a lot of them, even if they were local, did not choose to vend here this year because they were afraid that it was going to go not as good as last year because sales were relatively slow last year. However, this year I just really lucked out in that there are a few notable guests which brought in a lot of attendees. I'm not super familiar with them, but apparently the entire cast, if not most of the cast of Critical Role, are attending Anime Frontier, which of course brings in a lot of people. A lot of attendees means more opportunity for sales. And apparently even with some of the voice actor signings, they did have to cap off a few of them because they were already lasting hours and hours long. And even with other artists who did vend in past years have said that this year felt a lot more busy. And you can even see that in the footage of the crowds that I've put up. So most importantly, should you consider applying for Anime Frontier? And if you have the opportunity, should you vend at this convention? Based on my experience, as I say every time, I can only talk about my own experience. My experience may differ from yours and it may differ from another artist that you know. And to preface again, I did fly here, I am hoteling, and we did have to Uber, so those are costs that I would have to consider. I personally would come back again and try it out next year. I don't know if it'll be as good as this year just because we got lucky with the guest lineup, but I would come back. So far, I really like my experience here. The food's great, people are great. I don't see why I wouldn't want to come back. But for yourself, if you're traveling, maybe. For me, $350 for a 3-day event is pretty good, especially for a relatively big convention. I am used to California prices where it's typically $450 plus for 2 to 3 day cons, if not more. So to me, this is a deal. Even with paying for flights, I think it's worth it, but I would probably not recommend this convention if you're not local or if you're not within driving distance, especially if you're not an established artist. It can be relatively risky. I will say that having a social media presence, a YouTube presence has helped a lot because even to garner this many sales without having a stamp rally is pretty satisfactory for me. I also say that you are not allowed to have stamp rallies at this convention. I would say that all of the left field media events do not allow stamp rallies, so that includes ANYC and Rose City Comic Con, etc. But I'll say if you're able to keep your costs low, you might want to consider vending here, but I wouldn't recommend it for most people, especially if you are risk averse. Maybe don't go to this one. However, if you're more established, you are more willing to take the risk and you can afford to take the risk, then I would say go for it. But if you do not do well, please don't blame me because it is not my fault if you do not do well. Christina gave us this. Thank you so much. Big. Oh, they're customizable. That's so silly. If you didn't already, I do stream on Twitch. I typically stream once a week where I stream stamp rally designs, upcoming products, hanging out with other friends, and so much more. If you don't want to miss my next stream, consider following me on Twitch down below. Hello, it is 12:04 and 4 hours until con ends and 2 hours since con started. Very happy that today is an early end because I'm crashing out. Just kidding. I will say that the early end is quite nice. I am starting to get hungry and I didn't bring lunch. However, I will say that it is quite nice that you are able to bring food and drink from outside the convention inside. So it's not something that I need to worry about if I do have time to go out and get food. it is a little bit slower, and I pretty much expected that given that we're sold out of a good amount of our popular items. Honestly, even if there were no sales today, I would still be pretty satisfied given how well the past couple days went. This is just one of the realities of running a small business, and in this case, being in the artist alley, you could try to predict what might do well in a specific anime convention, but more often than not, there might be some slight deviations. In my case, I did not bring enough Psyche K pins. So there's a few things I just did not anticipate. That's on me. And it's a data point for next year if I do get into this convention. In that case, it's usually best to try to prepare for the best and hope that you've predicted well, maybe bring more than what you expect to sell, and just hope that you are still under 50 pounds for suitcases if you're coming back with more product. But in my case, I unfortunately underprepared for this con, and now I'm facing the consequences. But it is what it is. Still a very good problem to have. I'm very grateful. If you're enjoying this content and want to support me in other ways, I do have a Patreon. I post behind the scenes designs of my upcoming products, some sneak peeks, business advice that I don't share on social media, and so much more. And particularly with the Biz Buddies tier, I do post my reviews on conventions that I've done. So if you're interested in all of that and more, consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll have the link down below. Fortunately, this is also my last convention of the year, which is just wild to say because I feel like I've done so many. And technically this is a lot. I think I've done about double the amount of cons that I did compared to last year. Last year I did about 10, and then this year I did 19. So that is quite a drastic change. Would I do that over again? Maybe. If if my schedule allows it, this is my job. If you didn't know already, I do this full time. I run an artist alley full time. I also run my small business. And since my income solely depends on conventions and content and my small business and my online sales, I do have to do that all the time, which is why I am able to do this many events. Right now, with how the economy is going, I don't know if I'm able to scale back. I can only really scale back if I get into a lot of bigger conventions, but obviously that's probably not the case. And so to make up for not getting into bigger, more lucrative conventions, I would have to do more smaller cons. And given how unstable this job is, it is something that I would have to do just to even that out. If you do follow me on socials, you do know that I'm currently on a holiday hiatus, technically mostly for Mualcaina.com, not right now because I'm clearly working, but I do have a few weeks off at least for the holidays, and then I go back straight into work with 3 weeks straight of con. So I basically go into SAC Anime Winter right after New Year's, then Anime Los Angeles, and Anime Impulse LA. So if you're based in Sacramento or the SoCal area, hopefully I will see you there. For SAC Anime Winter, I am at table 101 in the Artist Alley. Anime Los Angeles, I will be at booth 828, sharing with Kelsey Kishi Draws, and we are pretty close to the Artist Alley section as well as the Ribbon Station. And I have a very, very exciting ribbon rally for that one that I cannot wait to reveal. And I will also be at Anime Impulse Los Angeles. I can't remember my exact tables for Anime Impulse LA, but I will have it over here. And while I am excited to be on break, I'm also very excited to be back at those conventions since they are a lot of fun. So I hope to see you there. Now that we're nearing the end of the year, with a couple weeks left, I'm very curious as to your thoughts on how your convention season has been going. Would you say that this year was also pretty slow for you? Was it better for you this year? I know depending on the artist and who you're talking to, and depending on where they are in their stage of business, usually for a lot of beginner artists, maybe this is their first or second year, they noticed that there was a big increase in sales because over the past year they learned how they could get better, applied that, and this year they did a lot better. For more established artists, they've done this for several years now. They've noticed that this year was a little bit slower for them due to the economy. So what are your thoughts? I'm very curious. Also not related to that, have you been to Anime Frontier? Have you vended in a Texas convention? I know a few months ago there was Anime Impulse Dallas. Heard that was an okay event depending on who you spoke with. Just want to hear your thoughts. Comment them down below and I will definitely read them. I am this close to ordering boba. There is a Demon Slayer boba booth and I kind of want some, but I need to hold off at least for a couple hours until we get food after, but I really want boba right now. Should I get boba? Should I? Maybe. So I did mention before how being new and shiny to a convention typically might mean more sales. Now, why is that? For example, in my case, I'm based in California, mostly SoCal. So if I were to do a convention that is not in my typical area of vending, in this case, Texas. Since I've never vended in Texas, and I do know that I have some people who do support the business who are based in Texas just based off of shipping address history from online orders and people who have mentioned that I should vend in Texas based on social media. More likely than not, I might do decently well, or at least maybe a little bit better than some of my SoCal events where I am a common presence. You can even think about other artists who you see all the time at conventions. Let's say you go to your local convention every year. You tend to see the same artists, but every so often there might be a handful who are new. Most likely you might buy from them because you never know if you're going to see them ever again in that convention. So it's probably best to buy from them then and there. In a sense, it does have that added sense of rarity that might incentivize someone to buy from you compared to a business that they tend to see at a lot of events. Like in my case, who does vend in SoCal a lot, someone might not buy from me at Anime Los Angeles because they know they'll see me at Anime Impulse LA, or they might see me at Anime Expo, and so on. I will say that it's not 100% guaranteed. I have done conventions where it is my first time and I did okay, or maybe not even like amazing numbers, even though I am new to that location. But that is something to consider if you are going to a con that is not in your familiar market, because that is pretty true to myself and a few other Artist Alley friends. It's also interesting because, as you know, I also sell lanyards. However, I have not been putting as much effort into my lanyards because I haven't had anything new besides the usual One Piece or Jujutsu Kaisen, Spy Family, Hunter x Hunter lanyards. However, interestingly, with this convention, it has been selling pretty well. I would also say that it sells well because the convention does provide a badge, not just for vendors, but also for attendees. And if the lanyard is not decorated, like in this case, I'm kind of surprised it's plain. I feel like for this type of convention, they might have partnered with Crunchyroll and made lanyards, but they do have a plain standard lanyard. Most of the time, people might seek out lanyards so then they can have a more decorative badge. And our lanyards have been doing really well. I'll say I did bring a good amount of them, but I usually haven't had the need to restock them since for most cons, I tend to sell maybe a couple of them, not that many. But they've been going pretty well, which is very interesting. So has the shaker keychains, which again, similar to the shiny and new concept, they usually don't sell as well at my California conventions. However, they've been going pretty well here in Texas. Thank you for the Nanami pin in the note. I will open the note in a bit, but thank you so much for stopping by and thank you for your support. I've never done Frontier before, but you've done Frontier last year for the first time.
Yes.
How was it this year compared to last year?
I personally did better this year compared to last year. Last year, it wasn't bad. I think I just set my expectations a bit too high in terms of revenue, and then it fell short, and then I was kind of sad. So I came in with extremely tempered, low expectations this year, but it turned out to be better this year. But I feel the experience ranges a lot because I've talked to a bunch of people, and I've had some people that said last year was really good for them, and this year wasn't as good. And then for us, it's like, oh, last year wasn't that great for me, and then it was really good this year. Yeah, I know I think the VAs or like the panels they brought this year might have influenced it as well. I saw like a lot of particular cosplayers that I usually don't see very often, where I'm just like, why are there so much Vox Machina cosplayers and stuff? And I was like, oh, okay, Critical Role is here, that makes sense.
Yes.
So it might have just been they booked really good guesses this year, but I also can't say that this year is better than last year because for some people it was the opposite.
Now that you have two events, knowing the good and then the bad, how would you prepare for next year?
I think I will pack more than I did this year, but less than I did last year.
Yeah.
Because this year I think I like set my expectations on the floor.
Yeah, same.
And so
yeah.
I like really underpacked because I was like, I don't want to have to ship things back, because last year I had to basically ship back the entire box that I shipped over. So I was like, okay, maybe I too intensely underpacked. So I'll probably just pack a bit more than I did this year.
Same.
We'll see.
If we get in next year, yeah.
Please. Also, hi Macy's vlog. Please look at my Snoopy nails.
Look at. Guess one of the cutest features about her nail.
The cheeks for Snoopy changes colors. It gets red when it's cold. I already showed this in my vlog, but I have to show you guys.
You have to know.
Snoopy nails.
We're almost done. Yay! It is 3:38. Freedom is near. We end at 4 today. We went back. Now that you know what my experience is like vending in Texas for the first time, if you're curious about my experience vending in Portland, Oregon, click on this video to see my experience at KomoriCon, and I'll see you in the next video.